morning, good morning. We are grateful that you joined us this morning. A special greeting to all the women out there. Happy Women's Day. It was on the 9th of August 1956 where thousands and thousands of women marched to the union buildings against the past laws and the unjust system of the day. So today we celebrate their perseverance, their courage, and their resilience. We are excited to have in our midst Mrs. Nkateko Ndala Mahoro. We'll be interviewing her this morning.
Thank you so much, Pastor Eunice. Indeed, greetings to all our viewers. It is an absolute pleasure to have you here with us. Today, the purpose of today's interview is to explore the issues that women face with our dear sister, Nkateko. But before we begin, I would like to introduce our interview panel. Pastor Eunice Mahlangu, Sister Mapiti Patla, Sister Tembi Senda, Sister Ruth Amutike, and myself, Hope Mkanda.
Sister Nkateko, briefly tell us about yourself. What do you do?
I am a managing director of a very dynamic practice, a psychology practice. I'm a psychologist myself, and I'm also in academia at the University of Pretoria in the psychology department. I am a mother of 2 beautiful daughters and a wife of 1 husband.
So, Sister Nkateko, tell us, what are the struggles that women are facing nowadays in South Africa, especially in the churches, that you would want to highlight this month?
Sure, and since it's Women's Month, I would like to highlight the fact that the struggles that women are facing in the church are not necessarily different to the struggles that women are facing outside the church. It does not mean that because women are inside the church, they are immune to whatever struggle the other women are going through. So maybe to highlight one of them is gender-based violence. We are ranked the highest when it comes to incidences of violence against women. And so we are very vulnerable as women in the South African context. Another one that I would like to also highlight, especially in this context, is the issue of financial freedom or financial emancipation, especially for women. Although our government and in society in general, it's very acceptable for women to be outside and economically mobile, we are still, as women, disenfranchised in terms of, the emancipation of the economic freedom, because when you look at our male counterparts, when they are up in the ranks, it's almost like for them the money or the financial means, it belongs to them and maybe their immediate family, whereas for women it has to stretch out to a wider community. So those are some of the things among many others that I will also highlight later on in this interview that I think women in the church, and as I said, we're not necessarily absolved from the issues and the challenges that other women outside are facing.
Awesome. Sis Nkateko, I just wanted to ask, with the state of the nation disaster and the lockdown that is upon us, level 5 especially, many of us have had to work from home. How has that affected the mental well-being of the family?
When we look at especially that lockdown level 5 that you are talking about, Sister Ruth, is that there were dire circumstances. A lot of people became depressed, anxious, and there is myriad of reasons why that came about. I mean, for some or for many, it was about job securities, as I already highlighted, the financial issues. The depression and anxiety is loss of link to social systems that people are used to. I mean, going to work, you are able to interact with your colleagues. When something has not gone right the previous day with your child, with your work, with your home life, with your spouse or your partner, or anything that happens within your home vicinity, you are able to go and share with a colleague to say, this is what happened, or you've got mgozi, or anything like that, But finding ourselves in the confines of the small walls. And for many of us, we can be very honest to say that we are not that privileged to be in big yards where we can even have the outlet. So that outlet. And then we also, what I can highlight is what I spoke about earlier on with the gender-based violence, where we also succumbed to the frustrations that our male counterpart goes that they experience on the day-to-day basis, because some of the things that the men were able to also be expressed through maybe alcohol abuse or smoking, to distress. We were the one to be the punching bags, because those outlets were not there. Those means of coping were not there, be it colleagues, be it going to the bars or the shebeens to be able to have a drink before they come home so that they are calm. So we were the punching bags because we are the weaker vessels, as the Bible is saying, and that is why the Bible encourages our husbands to wash us with the washing of the word, and also to guide us in that way, because we are weaker. We cannot be able to fight for ourselves. So again, as a highlight of, the finances, the gender-based violence, the distress, the anxiety, and there has been even an increase in suicidality. And it's not surprising if there is an increase in anxiety, if there's an increase in depression, because somebody does not have access to their support system. There will be a place where somebody is feeling unhopeful and hopeless in their situation.
You keep mentioning gender-based violence, like you've mentioned it quite a number of times. So my question would be, do you have cases in the Christian family where, women are reporting that their husbands are abusing them physically, be it emotionally, whichever way? Do you have such cases that have been reported, especially in the Christian family?
Absolutely. Earlier on I said to you, Mapiti, that it's not just because people are Christians, it does not mean that they are immune to those cases. Yes, it's unfortunate, because then it goes against the principles of God, because the Bible tells us that God is love, and everybody who knows God is love. And, you will hear disguises such as a man hitting a woman or a man violating a woman, be it verbally or emotionally. And then he says, it's because I love you. That is why I do this. I was attending a wedding of a particular person who is close to my circles a number of years ago. And the person said, I will, if I have to call you 100 times, I will call you because I love you. And that is control, that's manipulation. And that person was saying it as a speech in that wedding, as if he's saying that, I am going to make sure that you are safe. But you don't make sure a person is safe by calling them 100 times. That is already telling you that that person is trying to control the person. You will hear of Christian women saying, my husband does not allow me to dress this, and says, chooses a wardrobe for me. And there are certain subtle ways in which people are being abused and manipulated and controlled that it's not that obvious. And most of the time, it's not that obvious because it's not physical. And people think that therefore there is no abuse. Or somebody withholding PIN numbers for a card, or even holding your card. Those are financial abuses, besides your sexual abuse and physical abuse. Or even, telling you, you don't look as beautiful as Mabiti, or I wish you were as tall as Ngadego. Already that, as I say, it's subtle and it's unrecognizable, but then it grows. It grows a skin, it grows fur, it grows claws, and before you know it, the verbal and the emotional moves to the physical, because then there is an enabling environment for that to happen.
And seeing as we are in the pandemic, we are all living through this pandemic, we have all been working from home, and a lot of people are also saying it is a really good opportunity to spend with your family and to strengthen those family bonds. But my question would be, how do you strike a balance between your work life and your family life in this pandemic?
There is no balance. And we can all laugh about it as women. There's no balance. And I want to refer you to, I think it was a month ago, a June publication of Financial Mail. And the cover page says it all. For those who have not seen the cover page, I want to challenge you to go look at the cover page. It's depicting a woman, laptop on the countertop of a kitchen, another child pulling the mommy, mommy holding a child on the hip, and there is dishes, there is laundry, there is the laptop, there's the Zoom call, there is the little one saying, I'm hungry, or I've peed myself, and there's this one saying, Johnny has hit me, and so on. So, yes, Hope, as much as women we might want to say we are emancipated, that we might want to say that we have the freedoms that are chartered within our constitution, that balance does not exist. What exists is what you can create. I have a lot of women who come to me during this time of lockdown who says, you know, because we are working from home and the electronic version of work, my boss thinks I'm available 24/7. And I actually even had people who are fighting over the fact that their boss think that they are available 24/7 because, you know, you drop a message, you drop a WhatsApp, you drop a video call, anytime is sort of tea time. So that is what I'm saying, is that there is no balance. We need to create the balance. There is no striking of the balance, and that can only be done through wisdom, through negotiation, through even blocking certain numbers. There's a particular person that I'm seeing, and I said to them, block your supervisor. And the person is almost close to shock, you know, to say, can I actually? You can. After hours, you can. It's your right. It's your human right. It's within the Constitution. It's within, you know, the conditions of employment, that you cannot be available to your work life 24/7, because then what happens to your home life?
Tell me, have you been in a situation where you provided counseling to a family that is bereaved due to COVID-19 pandemic? Especially because in our culture, we are used to large funerals. Now with lockdown restrictions, the family has to go through restrictions in terms of the numbers of people to attend. But also in general, how do we provide pastoral support to such families?
Sure. It is a very difficult time for bereaved families, and we have been doing a series at the practice over YouTube, over Zoom, of support to offer the support for bereaved families. And we termed it complexities of dealing with grief during COVID-19, because we realized what you exactly highlighted, Mamrut. And the first thing that you started with, you say, us in the black culture, we are used to big funerals. I'm not sure if it's a culture or if it's something that we have enabled over time, because now people are now used to 50 people and then takeaways. And I think some of the things that we regard as norms and cultures, maybe they are not so much norm and cultures, and we need to revisit. Maybe also COVID-19 has come for us to reevaluate certain things, but we are not all about that. We are about how do we offer pastoral counseling to. So this week we had a virtual support group exactly with the same topic, and some of the people who were bereaved were saying that, you know, a check-in, although yes, I'm overwhelmed by phone calls, I'm overwhelmed by this, you know, video chats and so on, but a check-in goes a long way. Even if you cannot come to the funeral, you know, the transport money that you will have used to go into the funeral to say, Dikukwashidi, you can, as a family, yes, Matsidi, so yes, condolences, sending those flowers. It is particularly difficult because as human beings, we are used to comforting each other through touch in terms of consoling each other, but with this social distancing and not being able to touch each other, you know, it's almost like you as the consoler feel like you're not comforting enough, but you must know and rest assured that your support, that phone call, that message, it goes a very, very long way. And something that I've also heard from people that we have counseled who are bereaved in this time is that sometimes they do need their space, that we are actually suffocating them with, the messages. Yes, it's difficult for Mapiti to know if I need space if I've not said that. Or if I don't know them very well, or they don't know that the five of us have called the same person. So it's just in checking in and actually checking in much later on. So maybe when things are not that fresh, because that's when people start to process the grief. It's not in the midst of arranging for the funeral and, the week before or the 3 days, because now we only have 72 hours to bury. It's the after, it's the week after, it's the month after, it's the 2 months after, it's the anniversary of the death, that is actually quite meaningful under these very difficult circumstances where people cannot travel. Even, I had families that I saw, or even counseling, helping, where the husband passed on and the wife is in the UK. And with the travel restriction, it means that the wife could not bury their own husbands. Or where somebody's across the border, it means that person cannot bury their loved ones, which then talks to issues of closure, which then we need to help the person, and then at the later stage, we can also help them with those issues of closure to their grief.
Difficult situation.
Yo, Siskateko, you are facing a lot out there. So tell us, how does one deal with anxiety and depression, especially during this lockdown period?
Support. Get as much support as you can. Don't be isolated. Yes, depression says to you that you want to withdraw from your social system because you want to be alone, you want your curtain closed, you want to be sleeping the whole day, you don't want to be showering. But is to seek help. To seek help in a non-judgmental environment. I was with a student, and I was also doing a virtual interview, and the students are at the moment home. They are not on campus, and we are providing counseling, obviously, for them. And the students were saying, if I were to say to my immediate family that I'm with right now, to say that I'm depressed, they will look at me, they will just laugh. So that is why I'm saying you need to also determine the kind of support that you reach out to. So what I ended up saying to the students is that reach out to the university. The university is open, psychologists are open, counselors are open, helplines are open, your SEDEC, your Lifeline, there's many places where people can go out and reach help. That's how they can deal with it. Some of the ways is to, because when somebody's depressed, they lose interest in pleasurable activities, but is to also look at things that are not energy consuming, but that brings one pleasure. And I will even go as far as saying, if you want to eat that type of ice cream, do eat it by all means. Yes, I will want to say to you, go run. But who am I to say go run when you don't have energy, when you are lethargic? When you are in that state, you are lethargic, which means you cannot even take your body out of bed. You are you have slept for 16 hours, but you feel like you want to sleep for 3 other days. So I won't say to a person, go out for a run. So I will say, if you can grab your bar of chocolate and it releases those endorphins, which are feel-good hormones, with the anxiety, it might be things that help you to calm down, such as breathing. Breathing is free, but yet people take breathing so for granted that it helps us to clear our bloodstream of cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and it fills us with oxygen, which helps us to think more critically and more creatively than saying that there is a threat while maybe there is no threat. So there's many ways that I can mention. Those I want to highlight: doing something that brings you pleasure, listening to music, reading a book. As I said, being lazy, being in your pajamas the whole day, it's okay. Going for a run if you've got the energy, but then the support is very, very, very important.
Awesomeness and really, really eye-opening, Sis Kantleko. Thank you so much. But then still on those same lines, I just wanted to ask, what can families do, to cope with the effects of lockdown? What activities can they introduce that they can all do together and enjoy as a family during this period of time? Thank you.
I want to draw from my own family. Obviously, families are not the same. You've got blended families, you've got female-headed households, you've got intergenerational households, and then you've got the nuclear family, which is the traditional Western family with husband, wife, and kids. But what we had introduced is routine. Routine helps a lot. Yes, it is hard to establish routine under the circumstances because when kids are not, and I'm not talking about those who were addressed privately, by the president, the ones in the private schools, because they are going to the schools. There were us who's got kids in the public system, we were addressed publicly, and then the other ones were addressed privately. So I'm not talking about those ones because I think they can still keep the routine, especially with the online learning. The private schools have really been supportive in offering the online space, which then means that the child can go into the Google Classroom or the Zoom classroom and still have that routine. But for other parents who don't have those other privileges, it has been hard, and it has been a matter of chop and change. And, for us with our dynamic schedules, we had to work out many routines. I think we have worked out since lockdown about 4 or 5 routines and establish which one works. And it's not all the routines that will work all the time with everybody. So establish which one, routine also helps with anxiety, especially for the little ones, because then they know what to expect when. But when they don't know and things are chaotic and we do things randomly at any time, then also the kids become anxious. At least for us as adults, we know what to expect because we control our own lives. But kids don't know what to expect and they cannot control. And what helps them with the anxiety is when there is routine. And as I said, you can then fiddle with different routines. And our latest routine is waking up at 4 a.m. So that is how far we have gotten, so that we can fit in schooling because it was not happening. The other thing is really, earlier on, I talked about the fact that families don't know each other anymore because people go to work early in the morning and they come back late. And I think if we can be opportunistic about the lockdown and say this can be a time to enrich the family system. And most people saw it as a negative. And we saw in March already articles that were coming out of China about the rise in the divorce rate. By the way, I was doing some research that in South Africa it's not different. Actually, divorce rate has risen up by 22% since after the level 5, because then people started taking action. So we are not even far from the global picture in terms of the divorce rate, and the divorce rate is caused by somebody realizing that, oh, this is my wife, and these are my kids, It's like you're seeing your wife and your kids for the first time, and yet you have been living with them for 15 years, for 20 years, for 30 years, or for whatever years that you have been living with them, but because you have never had the time to be with each other. So I always say for stronger families, it's time, it's an opportunity to come together. Obviously, for families that already had cracks in the foundations, they are the ones who are going to struggle, and we will have to work much harder with them. So it's little things, games. Board games, when did you last play a board game? Our thing for us as a family, it's hiking, especially at the level 4, we took advantage of the fact that the roads were open from, I think, 5 a.m. to 9 a.m.? 6 to 9. Yeah, 6 to 9 a.m. So my husband and I will go jogging together and then come at 8 o'clock to fetch the kids, and then we'll just take 3 or 4 kilometers, and that also refreshed them in their minds. But also it was a family activity. And then now that the parks are open, we are doing, we hike together. So there's many little things that we might have even forgotten how to do. Oh, and one incredible one is cooking together. We have made so many pizzas, and I've got so many pictures of pizzas and cupcakes, and, so just look at things that you enjoy together as a unit, as a household. As I said, families are different, and there's no one correct definition of a family. But whatever works for you as a particular family, use that and to be creative as something that brings you together.
Firstly, I just want to thank you for permitting me to put on my PJs all day when I feel like it. So when you see me in my slippers and PJs all day, please do not judge me. Don't, or allowing me to also have the tub of ice cream. So now I know where the kilograms are coming from. I'm going to ask you a very sensitive question, because you also mentioned that, during this lockdown, husbands and wives are starting to discover their relationship more. So, the Bible teaches us that what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. How would you advise a woman who is a Christian who feels like, I've had it with abuse, I've had it?
It is violating the image of God as God has created us. I earlier on said God is love, and whoever knows God knows love. Which means then when somebody, I cannot break a cup and claim that I love that cup, that cup is precious to me. I think I am lying. That is lies from the pit of hell. I also want to highlight, because sometimes as a church, you even phrased it, which highlights the stigma. You said a sensitive question. It's not a sensitive question because we are dealing with this on a day-to-day basis. So it needs to stop being a sensitive question. It needs to stop being and we need to address it for what it is. It is abuse. And as a church, I think our role can also be offering safe havens for women who are in such environments, because I think most of the time women are unable to speak out and unable to seek help because they feel there is nowhere to go where they will be embraced. I think it's Matthew 24:40. It says, if you did it to the least of this, you did it to me. I think that is the highest calling, in embracing the least of this. This is a person who is helpless, is manipulated into a situation that I've talked about, the emotional, the verbal, the financial. It started subtle. It started with a shove. It started with a pull to say, where are you going? And then it becomes a knockdown. And us as a church, I think we've got that responsibility to highlight the so-called taboo and sensitive issues, such as a woman needing safety from an abusive husband. Because remember, in that situation, the kids are also watching. What are the kids supposed to become when they grow up? I had a man a few years ago who came and he just slumped on my therapy couch. And I thought, because he was coming from a hard train, I thought it was because of exhaustion. It's the end of the day and so on. And he said, my past has caught up with me. And what he meant when he said, my past caught up with me, is that he's a Christian man, is that he witnessed his father hitting his stepmother all of his life growing up. And he promised himself that he's never going to do what he saw his father doing to his stepmother. But lo and behold, when he saw those words, slumping into the couch saying, my past has caught up with me, he had just hit his wife. Why? Because although he tried to run as far away as possible, that experience was normalized in his life. So as a boy child, as a girl child, whose experience is normalized, that it is okay to be hit and still go back and go back. I'm not saying that reconciliation is not possible. That I'm not saying. But reconciliation is possible within boundaries when the other person is willing to get help. Until such a time, it means we're going to be in that same situation, the same chaos, and that adverse situation, that adverse childhood experience becomes a perpetual thing that gets perpetuated into the schooling, the relationships that this person will have with other people, the kind of person that they will be in the society as well.
Wow. Sister Nkateko, you spoke about the church providing support to women who are going through divorce. But what role can the church play also in the life of the women who are in abusive marriages? Maybe just one practical clue and idea that the church can step in, especially during this season where women find themselves in abusive marriages. And you said it's not only in homes where people are not born again. What practical thing can the church do just to step in those situations?
And I mean, the immediate practical is by being open about this topic so that women can realize that the church does not shame the woman, because most of the time who gets shamed, according to Proverbs 31, because you're supposed to be the one who is building your marriage. So now that your marriage is crumbling, there must be something wrong with you. Sister Ruth, you're not fasting enough. You're not praying enough. You are not seeking God. You are not walking right. So it's by highlighting and saying that we are not shaming you. You are a victim in that situation. And you are now, so then it helps to open up that space for women to be able to come forward and say, Mam Ruti, I know you might not have a room in your house, but I know that there is a chapel here at church. Can I, for about 2 or 3 nights, with a sleeping bag, sleep here? Because now if that woman has got a perception that by the time she asks that question, she will be judged to say, Awa, Tsamulukisa, go and make things right. And who is supposed to go make things right? It's her who is succumbing under that same violence. So we are putting that particular person and the kids, and especially the kids, in a vulnerable situation. So those are some of the practical ways you, Mamruti, you have highlighted the fact that, especially under the lockdown, our churches are empty under the lockdown. The activities that usually take place during the week, at the moment we are doing them online, via Zoom, via Teams, via, so that can be a temporary shelter. We can even apply through the government, for subsidies to have the programs where the government will subsidize us as a church to shelter. And there is a program actually within the social development for women who are in these situations that can even fund or grant the church to be, they are just looking for infrastructure, and that's what it is.
That's so good. We live in an era where there's just a lot of contradictions in the. Like one woman can say, I am for another woman, and then in the same body, I've got that pull head down syndrome. But then as women, what can we do to support each other? Like, avoiding this pull head down syndrome. How can we fight that, and how can we be for one another and actually mean being there for each other? How can we do that?
We need to recognize where the spirit comes from. And I will even liken it to what the apartheid government did. Mapiti omopedi, na kimuchangan. Already, that in the same sentence says something. Which means it's the other person who made us to recognize these differences. It's not us, because us, we are Bantu. From across, we are Bantu. Across the continent, across borders, across tribal, across shades. So, meaning that there is an enemy from the other gender, because they know, just like the apartheid knows, that if we are united as a continent, as black folks, as Africans, we are powerful. Meaning that the other gender also knows that we, as the female, when we are united, so that is why I say we need to recognize where it comes from. Because when we recognize that it's external, then we will not fight amongst us. Then I will see Hope for who she is. I will see Mapiti for who she is. I will not say, Mapiti has got 13-inch high heels. I'm going to buy 15-inch high heels. Who created those 15-inch and 13-inch high heels to start with?
Well, that's all that we had time for. As you know, time is our greatest enemy. We are grateful to Sister Nkateko for the time she took to be with us so that we can tap into this expertise and vast knowledge. Thanks to you all, ladies, for being with us. God richly bless you.